Frühling, Sommer, Herbst, Winter.
Pina Bausch is the first who came with a whole new dance form, called dance theater, where the dancers can speak during a ballet, scream, or simply walk. She went above the conventional way when the dancer has to learn every step one after the other, or positions already seen and seen again. Also, she used a universal need as the key subject of her pieces, the need for love, for intimacy, and emotional security. With this new way to work, she practically abolished the invisible divide between the real person and the stage characters so that the audience often has a sense of watching real-life events instead of an imaginary space who's trying to seduce us with the perfection of the technique. That relation with reality is one of the principal effects of Bausch's work, taking the audience in a place where they not only can but have to question their own life by showing true emotions. Bausch worked with her dancers in a way where the movements aren't just an aesthetic aspect of their dance, but becomes part of their whole body. She wanted them to transform the movements into a survival need to move. I mean by that, the movements became their voices, their soul, a new language. The way Pina Bausch pushed the dance world into another level made her influenced many choreographers even after her death. Deviate physical theater make their dancers speak, sing, and play in their pieces. In that piece from Henry Purcell, each characters are represented by one dancer and two singers at the same time on stage. You see, with that piece, another mix of genre.
Dancing under Pina meant not being afraid to get your feet wet. First, she would transform us and rid us of our fears and hesitation, both in our lives and then in our dancing. She was considerate to each individual's experience and personal aspects of their life that they brought to dance. The favorite pieces I danced were the ones where we got dirty. There was something so rewarding about finishing a rehearsal or performance, dripping in sweat and covered in different materials used in the piece. Things like rolling around in dirt, running barefoot in the woods, and throwing ourselves against walls and on floors were everyday activities with Pina. With her constant inspiration and choreography, there was never a time that a piece or an individual movement seemed like it was going too far. She pushed the limits of dance and of our abilities. The most powerful and enjoyable piece I danced in under Pina was Le Sacre du Printemps.
Bausch was very influential, however very criticized in her vision of introducing theater into the world of dance. She makes it very clear the message that she wants to pass, as she vividly depicts the strange interplay between men and women in today's society. American critiques are most often very shocked by her neutrality in regards to the way she demonstrates the strange interplay, as it is very brutal, aggressive, and blunt. Leading dance critic Arlene Kroos writes, "She keeps referring us to the act of brutalization and humiliation, to the pornography of pain." Alan Kriegsman writes, "The unsettling thing about Bausch's work, despite its originality and mastery, is that it leaves one unsure of where she stands in the moral spectrum, which can be seen through the brutality and inhumanity between sexes in pieces such as Café Muller. This is a piece that clearly shows how in a Pina Bausch dance, the invisible divide between the real person and the stage character seems to collapse, so that one often has a sense of watching barely mediated, real-life events." The other very typical aspect of Pina Bausch's dances is that her choreographies do not depict a clear message or tell a true story. She provides the material necessary to give the audience a feel of the mood of her pieces, but leaves it to them to tell a true story and give it true meaning, which is why some critiques such as Kroos and Kriegsman are very doubtful about the morality of her pieces. The third very criticized aspect of Bausch's choreography is that she seems to portray a very anti-feminist message within the male-female interplay. Such can be seen through Café Muller's most famous scene, where a woman falls from a man's arms and is repositioned there, this act repeating itself until she no longer has to be repositioned, but repeatedly falls and comes back to him on her own. This was analyzed as being an act of self-inflicted brutality. New Criterion critique Laura Jacobs insists on the disunity present in most of her pieces, which leads other critiques to pose questions about her morality. She says, "A Boss Evening, you realize, takes place in those 3 to 4 inches between nature and nurture, good and evil, and just about any other dichotomy one cares to name. It's a tight crawl space." She refuses to place herself in the middle of both poles, as she causes a constant tension between the opposites, which is the true cause of so much uproar in her pieces.
Pina always saw the best in us. She never compared us to one another, but instead saw us as our own individual talent and with our own story to tell. She never really saw any flaws in her dancers, only traits that made us who we were, and she used them in any piece that she made. Whether you were reserved, fragile, or strong, she saw all these as strengths, never anything to be ashamed of. She once told me my initial shyness around new people was what made my dancing so sincere. This always stuck with me. All her dancers felt appreciated for exactly who they are. And of course technique was important, but emotion overpowered this. Her dances were a direct representation of us as dancers. Based on an idea or a thought, she would ask us to create a movement. And with our own movements, she would create an entire piece. She just had a way of making people feel so at ease, as though you'd known her all of your life. She could break you out of any shell and be the reason that you kept going. Like a friend, with a real concern and interest in you. She was like a home away from home. I think that everyone who danced for Pina can feel this way. That absolutely nothing can ever compare to the feeling of knowing an entire dance that is created around you and the real essence behind who you are.